All right, we've been talking about the economy on the show, particularly focused on two critical supply chain issues going on. Protests going on in China. That's over lockdown policies, and it is affecting factories in China. We talked about that in hour number one. If you missed it, that was with my supply chain expert. Please go to the free iHeartRadio app, download it, and this program appears in podcast form in the afternoon. Now, my transportation and logistics expert is up because, of course, you are hearing our regional news team talk about this all morning long, that it looks like Congress is going to intervene and try to head off a potential railroad strike. Andrew Donaldson's back on the line. And Andrew, welcome back to Iowa Radio. Good morning.
I love being on Iowa Radio. You get all the fellowship without the wind chill, so good to be back with you, my friend.
Yeah, hadn't thought about that, my friend. So let's get people caught up, Andrew, because, of course, before the election, we were hearing that the Biden administration had struck a deal with union leadership. A railroad strike had been averted. What brings us to this point?
Well, because that was the parade that they threw themselves because they did step one and step two got kicked past the election and it was a little bit of a smokescreen. Now we got to deal with step two because what happened was that was between the union leaders and the companies, and the White House press secretary Marty Walsh brokered that deal. But now the unions have rejected that, at least 3 of the 4 that were problematic anyway. But it doesn't really matter because as long as only one of them doesn't, none of the others are going to cross a picket line.
Yeah.
That brings us to this week. On Monday, the White House released this extraordinary statement by President Joe Biden where he said, well, I'm very pro-labor, but, and what the but was, and we'll just nutshell this a little bit. Go read that whole document for yourself. It's amazing. It's on the White House website. He basically says, look, we can't shut down the economy for this, so I call on Congress to do forced arbitration. Now, this is a delineated power Congress has in labor disputes when it comes to a national thing like the railroads. The thing here is, and this is the big but, Congress is now going to get involved here. What does Congress do? Because President Biden in his letter demands that they go with the agreement in September that the unions have already rejected. If they do this, this is going to kick it past Christmas. They won't get the economic shutdown. It's going to make this situation way worse down the road. So this would be another kicking down the road. If Congress deals with it in a manner that goes back and gives labor some of the things they want, that could be a little bit different. But this is all about watching Congress now over the next couple of days. Maybe as early as today they start to take this up.
And Andrew, as you're pointing out, the politics of this is pretty amazing. I mean, to stereotype, we think that the Democrats are aligned with the unions and Republicans tend to be aligned with companies. But here you've got Biden and I think Schumer as well saying, oh, yeah, we got to go full speed ahead with bringing this thing to a close. That's pretty amazing politics. And my thought on this, and I'd love for you to weigh in, Andrew, is this wouldn't have happened before the election, but now we're past the election, so the Democrats are willing to irritate their natural allies. Am I right in that?
You're absolutely right. You're showing off where you've been a legislator before. You've seen this movie, haven't you, sir?
Yeah.
Here's what happened, and let's just be grown folk adults and have a grown folk chat here real quick. The amount of union members is a lot smaller than the amount of people in the country that are going to be affected by a rail shutdown, so they're the ones that are going to get screwed here. They just looked at this like a math problem. By they, I mean our Democrat. There's an old joke about our progressive friends, and this comes from a progressive friend of mine. He said, the Democratic Party is only as progressive as the nearest moderate that will complain about it. That's exactly what this is. And to be honest, I think the union folks, the rail workers, they really are getting screwed here on this sick time. They're going to feel really aggrieved. And that's why I'm saying if they force this deal that they don't really want, go ahead and bookmark this one for next year or next fall or somewhere down the road. This is going to blow up in everybody's face. So even if this gets done and we avert a shutdown, dog ear this one, put it in your memory because we're going to come back to this again down the road again.
Andrew, let me confirm that for you because I started talking about this in hour number one, and I had a railroad worker call in, and he said exactly what you just said. They are going to feel like they're getting screwed, and it has to do with this sick time, and it has to do with the fact that you cut workforce and you're not able to hire other people back. And I asked him, I said, what is the implication if this deal is forced on you? What happens then, Andrew?
Yeah, and let's be real clear. Things don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in a sequence. This sick time issue, and that's the nut. That's the thing they're not going to bend on, is the sick time. This came to a head because of COVID, because they have very strict attendance policies. The reason sick time is such a big deal is sick time is protected time. The company cannot punish you for that. So the company's saying is they don't need sick time because they can take their PTO. The problem is the company can reject PTO. The whole point of sick time is you're sick, you can't punish me for being sick.
Yeah.
COVID brought this to a head. This is a COVID issue. Now it's at the bargaining table. This has been going on for 3 years. The agreement in September, they purposely didn't deal with the sick time because that was the sticking point. They wanted to get the agreement, so they just said, well, we're not going to deal with the stickiest part of this. And now the rail unions are going, well, wait a minute, that's the most important thing to us. It wasn't the pay raise, it was the sick time. He's absolutely right. I'm not the biggest union guy. I've got my issues with big labor in America, but I think the union workers here have a very legitimate beef, and if they do this and they push this down on them, yeah, I think they have a very good point to say they're aggrieved, and I think they're right.
So, Andrew, the way that I would see this coming together, because you said, there are issues out here, and I'm trying to figure out how you get the votes in a Democrat Senate, Republican House. I mean, is the thing that you just rally everybody around is the September agreement that was announced? If you start tinkering with that, I see votes dropping off. So is that ultimately where we're going?
Right. Well, the House, they can force it through because they still got the numbers. The Senate is what to watch here. There's a couple things going on. Senator Marco Rubio has been making noise about can you imagine the Republicans are getting on the left flank on labor on Joe Biden in the world we live in, right? But Rubio's out here making noise about this. I would watch the adults in the room. Senator Richard Burr, he's the head of that committee for labor. I would watch people like Joe Manchin, who, of course, from West Virginia, he has deep ties to labor. I would watch Secretary Marty Walsh, see what he gets involved. The administration is going to want to push through the September agreement without modification. The best thing for everybody would be for Congress to put these sick days back in the agreement so when it goes to forced arbitration, the union folks have something to deal with.
Okay.
I don't know. They only got to peel off one or two senators to make this a big, big, fat mess. It's going to be very interesting watching the machinations of this. And remember, it's very interesting. I was talking to my contacts that I talked to that cover Congress. On Monday, I was like, is anybody talking about this? Because we've been talking about this. I was just on with you a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking about this Monday. That letter dropped. Joe Biden knows what he's doing. He got Congress to act because he dropped this letter and made an issue of it. He could have done this at any point in the last 2 years. The former administration could have done this. This is a kick the can down the road. They have to stop this strike for the economy, but the reason they have to do it is because of the mess they themselves made. Let's not lose focus on that.
Andrew Donaldson, this is why he's my go-to guy on this issue, and you're going to continue to hear from Andrew on this program as we watch, as Andrew said, we watch what Congress does. Andrew, thanks very much for joining me this morning.